Microsoft actually bought Activision Blizzard King. Make sure to watch to the end to get all the details.
Well, it is official. Activision Blizzard has been purchased by Microsoft for $69 billion.
$69 billion, everybody! The perfect number. Good job, Microsoft. Good job, Activision Blizzard. If it was going to go off in any sort of fashion, it goes off on a 69. That's the best way to do it. I can't believe that deal actually closed. There was so much, I don't know. I remember hearing stuff in the news and reading articles that it was just such a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, Microsoft is going to be this huge monopoly. It actually went off. It's kind of wild. And here we are. Let's see what he has to say about it.
69 billion. Nice. Now, with the memes aside, there is some impact this might have upon the gaming community, so let's talk about it.
Okay.
Most obvious of these would, of course, be the fact there was a giant court case around this acquisition due to the
That's what I thought. Okay, I'm not crazy. There actually was a court case. So it took 22 months. Yeah, it took way longer than it probably would have normally to close because of the concerns, the court case, everything.
fact that, I mean, it basically boils down to monopoly. Sony was
Right.
not too happy that Microsoft is gobbling up all of these, but from my understanding, Sony is still the second largest gaming company in the world, which is still ahead of Microsoft and behind Tencent. Here's an article.
Okay, so this is what I imagine. I imagine Microsoft like this. If any of you have seen Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli, think of that gold creature, the what is he called? I had to look it up. Okay, so the Spirited Away creature, Studio Ghibli Spirited Away, that creature that gives gold, he goes yeah, no face. So I think of Microsoft in consuming video game companies as No Face from Studio Ghibli consuming all that food and just going nuts. It's it's an interesting analogy, but it's the same sort of thing. Just consuming and consuming and consuming. Microsoft really is becoming a major video gaming kind of monopoly. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I really can't tell. I mean, it could be good because they have Game Pass. They have platforms to make games more available and be this kind of hyper-competitive entity, I guess. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe it won't be very competitive if they buy up everything, right? I guess Sony's got to get in there more, man. Sony, buy up some more companies. Nintendo, get into the action. Maybe we need a fourth player. It'd be kind of interesting if we did. We'll see what happens, though.
Go from the LA Times saying effectively the same thing, mentioning that Microsoft is the third largest gaming company in the world by revenue, which would in fact be behind Tencent and Sony in Japan.
So, okay, it's third. It's third behind Tencent and Sony. Okay. And so where does that put Nintendo? Maybe fourth? So maybe I was wrong. There already are 4 players and we need a fifth. A fifth would make things interesting. Yeah.
However, I think the argument behind the monopoly is not so much the revenue in which they are creating, but the games in which they have their hands on.
Yeah.
And with the acquisition of all of these games, Activision games, Blizzard games, and King games, that's going to make Xbox Game Pass pretty good. In fact, they say so as much. If you look right here, we're also beginning to work to make Activision Blizzard and King's much beloved library of games available in Game Pass and other platforms. So that is directly from Microsoft themselves. This is
this just brings up so many questions for me. As I'm watching this, I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay, so what are they going to change? Are they going to change the kind of pay-to-win nature of some of the games that, Activision Blizzard King has? Are they going to... How is it going to develop? Are we going to have WoW on Game Pass? Like, there's all these questions going through my mind as I watch this. This could get really interesting. It could be... There's so many possibilities, basically. It's exciting in the sense that there's some interesting ways that this could play out, but I don't know how much it really changes things. Like, yes, more people will have options to play certain games that they couldn't before, but otherwise, I don't know how much it will actually change.
From the Xbox chief Phil Spencer, when they were welcoming the Blizzard employees to Microsoft, they are already starting to state these games are coming to Game Pass. Sort of reminds me of the Star Wars acquisition by Disney, where they went and acquired an IP and put it into their streaming type of platform in order to increase the monthly sales of that. It seems like it's somewhat of a similar play. They go out, they acquire a big chunk of IP with a lot of games in there. They slide in their Game Pass and they start selling more monthly subscriptions. I'm not a big hater of this as much as I was with okay, maybe Disney acquiring Star Wars for me felt a little bit worse than Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, strictly because Game Pass is actually pretty good. I mean, I've owned Game Pass. I don't own it now, but I haven't.
Yeah, I kind of agree here. I don't see this as that big of a deal, honestly, in terms of like what we'll actually see, right? So you can still get the games, you can still play them like normal. Maybe some changes will happen with the games themselves, but yeah, in terms of what we'll actually see, it's probably going to be like, okay, hey, now we're advertising, Diablo 4 on Game Pass or something like that. It's just going to make things more available in terms of the Game Pass nature of it. But yeah, I don't know how much other changes we'll actually see in terms of this growth of this monopoly.
In the past, and I've never begrudged the money I spend on Game Pass. There's a lot of good games in there. But I
Yeah.
think it really all comes down to Call of Duty. Most people in the conversation seem to bring up Call of Duty continually, aka Call of Duty is too big of an IP. And I think Sony in particular was feeling a little bit scared that Call of Duty was going to be locked behind only the Xbox or the Xbox Game Pass sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a valid concern. Call of Duty, man. Call of Duty just continues to be this huge FPS IP. I don't understand how. I mean, it's just gone on so long. It's kind of, in my opinion, run its course. Call of Duty is not some insanely fun game to me, personally. I'm sure there are huge fans out there, and that's great. Like, you guys enjoy yourselves, so that's awesome. I just don't understand what they are doing new with it anymore. I mean, I guess it's fine if you like the same gameplay and it's fun still. I mean, look at Counter-Strike. That thing has gone for freaking, what, 15, 20 years or something like that. And now there's a Counter-Strike 2, right? Because it's so fun and the gameplay hasn't even really changed. It's just, updated graphics and maybe a couple new maps. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much Call of Duty being on Game Pass and things like that is really going to affect too much. I guess there's a valid concern like that with Sony. Oh, we don't get Call of Duty anymore. What's this? Like, this is scary. I don't know. Yeah, it's a valid concern, I guess. I can understand that.
Pushing Sony out of the market for Call of Duty, which is not what is planned. They have actually signed an agreement to keep a 10-year deal to keep Call of Duty on the PlayStation. After that 10-year...
There you go. Sony, what are you worried about? I mean, yeah, I guess it's still a long-term concern. After 10 years, what's it going to be? Maybe they'll still, be open to signing a new agreement, or maybe it'll be closed off from them. Who knows? Maybe Call of Duty won't even be around in 10 years. We don't even know for sure. But yeah, okay. So we know now, at least for 10 years, Sony, you have no concerns.
However, well, it's a crapshoot because they said they reserve the right to be able to make Activision Blizzard franchise exclusives to the Xbox platform going forward. So in 10 years, maybe. One thing's for sure, though, is the last few years, Microsoft has been showing a lot more interest in building out the gaming side of things. We had all the gaming leaks that we addressed earlier with the largest leak in gaming history that you can see in that previous video. But also, Microsoft acquired Bethesda for $7.5 billion just within the last 2 years. This is back in 2021. And even back then, they gave them a company's first-party Xbox game studio total of 23.
I kind of forget that Bethesda was acquired by Microsoft. I mean, I guess it makes sense because I know that I've heard it said, oh, Starfield's on Game Pass. So obviously they are, but it's just, it kind of surprises me that happened. And then on top of this, Activision Blizzard. So when I see it kind of layered like that with two big studios, I mean, maybe they are becoming kind of a threat. Maybe a monopoly with Microsoft is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, I know monopolies in general are not a good thing because of that, lack of competition. So they can kind of put the prices where they want and nobody's driving prices down. Yeah, that is scary for the consumer. Like, I would hate for somebody who can barely afford, their favorite games as it is to no longer be able to play games at all. I know how much of a kind of an escape video games are for people. So yeah, putting it in that frame of reference or, that lighter perspective, it is kind of scary.
As opposed to 13 with PlayStation at the time. So you can start to see why Sony was starting to feel the screws put them just a little bit. So how are the employees of the company feeling about this? Well, it seems like mostly positive from everything I've been seeing.
Good.
This has partly to do with the fact that Microsoft seems somewhat open to unions. For instance, here's an article talking about the U.S. Tech Union praises completion of Microsoft Activision's Blizzard acquisition, says it represents a milestone for improving labor in gaming. The president...
Let's unionize those video game companies. I don't know. I really don't have any opinion on this. I mean, I can understand why people like unions. I hear that, the whole concept of a union is you have the union to fight for you on things, so you're not alone in the workplace, kind of, or that's the idea anyway. Sometimes in practice, it doesn't always feel like it plays out that well. Like, I've been I've been represented by a union, but I didn't pay the union dues. But that's the concept, the way that it was pitched, but I never really actually heard or saw people really get that much union representation. So for me personally, I don't know how good they are or how much it will help the gaming industry, but if it makes people feel like it'll help, then sure, why not?
President of the Communication Workers of America says is a new day for workers at Activision Blizzard. He goes over some of the past history of Blizzard, which has been pretty sketchy, and talks about how now there's a 60-day waiting period before those Blizzard employees are allowed to free to start talking about unionizing and discussing labor organization. And this would be because Microsoft signed a neutrality agreement in 2022 agreeing to not interfere with any unionizations attempts. Same sentiment seems to be mirrored, at least across the Twitter accounts I'm following for Blizzard. For instance, Adam Fletcher, one of the most notable within the Diablo 4 community here, seems to be fairly positive about going back to work for Microsoft, retweeting things about the same CMA decision that I read to you guys earlier, more repost here, etc. So it seems like the courts approved it, the employees are fine with it, Game Pass will be getting probably some bangers coming, and there should be 10 years of non-exclusive Call of Duty after that.
So, in other words, everything feels generally promising so far, right? The employees are cool with it. It got approved by the courts and everything, like you said. Now we just wait and see how the monopoly plays out in terms of pricing, in terms of, how things will end up affecting the consumer down the road. Because it really could get ugly if they continue to buy up more and more game design studios, more game developers, and they just kind of start cornering, Sony and Nintendo more and more out of the market. I mean, Nintendo has their own thing. They kind of do their own thing, right? They don't put games on Steam. They don't put games on Epic or anything already. So maybe Nintendo's fine. They won't be concerned, I guess. Who knows? But for Sony in particular, they're probably concerned. I can understand why they would be concerned with all of this happening.
That, who knows? Is this going to affect Diablo 4 is probably a question you're wondering. Well, it's a new parent umbrella company. I doubt it automatically changes the game.
Yeah.
However, if we're lucky, we might see Diablo 4 go on to Game Pass. We know it's already going to Steam, but Game Pass could be pretty cool as well. I think it would be a game that would fit Game Pass. You pay a little bit of a monthly subscription, you get a handful of decent games, one of which would be Diablo, would probably be a W for Game Pass.
Yeah.
In other Diablo 4 news, this one's actually pretty funny. Diablo on the official Twitter ended up deleting the video they posted, not only because it was mathematically incorrect. In fact, if you look right here, here's our boy Rax on Reddit breaking down the why 40% of 1,000 is not 40, but in fact...
That math. Look at that math. 1,000 times 40%. What? I'm pretty sure it's 400. Okay, we got this. Guys. 1,000 times 0.4. That's 40%, right? 400. Okay, that's what I thought. So yeah, what is that math?
400, but they also had it backwards, showing that the quality of life improvements for the dungeon were before and after, and they got them swapsies, and then they showed two horses going the exact same speed and said, hey, take a look. We've improved the speed of the horses. It was a memeable trailer that has since been deleted. I think
Blizzard, oh man, Diablo 4 team, Diablo 4 guys, you guys, do you know what you're actually doing over there? Like, do you actually? Oh man, I just have so many questions and concerns. Are you getting paid enough? Are you getting enough sleep? Like, what's going on? That's pretty bad.
Puts it best himself.
So Everything here is wrong.
Now, there's some interesting news in relation to Diablo 4 and BlizzCon. So this here on Twitter is Joe Shelley says, Asmongold, saw your question. Make sure to tune into BlizzCon. And he says, thank you. What question was that? It was, this one is the context. Are there plans for making the Necromancer Malignant Heart where it casts for you to be part of the core game? This is in reference to basically my favorite heart from Season 1 that would make your corpse casts and curses, etc., automatic. Now, he says...
That would be sick. I like the sound of that. Hey, 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 hey.
In the BlizzCon, this was a Season 1 mechanic, so maybe we're going to see stacking season mechanics coming to the Eternal realm. We don't know, but there is supposed to be some announcements on BlizzCon. Now, if you...
Okay, and they definitely made it sound like it's going to be addressed in BlizzCon. Yeah, so interesting. Maybe that bodes well? I'm not sure. I feel like they wouldn't address that question at all if they felt like they were going to give a negative answer, right? Or are they just generally trying to build hype for BlizzCon, and so therefore they'll just answer anything? Hey, you know, if we don't want to answer it right now, hey, just stay tuned for BlizzCon. You never know. Who knows? You know, it could go either way.
If you didn't know, I myself will actually be at BlizzCon as well as TwitchCon in just 7 days. So if you're going to be at either of those and you see long red hair, feel free to come up and say hi. Okay. I am rather looking forward to kind of getting out of Alaska and checking out some of these conventions. What's actually interesting about this is the first BlizzCon, to my understanding, that have not fully sold out. In fact, you can still purchase your tickets right now. And look at...
I wonder if there's a reason for that. Maybe it's because of the many, many, many recent Blizzard L's. And that is why it has not sold out, because people do not want to spend this crazy money to get in. General admission, $300. Just let that sink in. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. That is just insane. Yeah, there's a reason. There's a definite reason.
These prices, $299, $799 for the full Portal Pass, but it's $300 to get yourself into the main door, which is, I mean, it's pretty expensive. I can see why they didn't all sell. To be fair, I guess you get some other stuff with it. You get a backpack, etc. with it, but still $300. And
I don't care about that. They could get a backpack from China for $20. Like $300? Are you kidding me? No.
$100 is kind of a lot for a ticket. Now, the dates for this are November 3rd and 4th, which coincides exactly with the release of Warcraft Rumble. So if you did not know, November 3rd, there is a new Warcraft game. It is a mobile game going to iOS in the Play Store, which is in the Warcraft universe. Effectively, it's minis, a lot like Clash Royale. I actually play tested this a little bit. I thought...
Yeah, it's okay. So the video's kind of dwindling here, losing my interest. These are things I'm not really concerned about anymore. So just to wrap up, Activision Blizzard King, purchased by Microsoft. Little bit of a concern, you know, little bit of a concern for a Microsoft monopoly and how that'll affect kind of the gaming sphere as a whole. But for now, it doesn't really affect anything except that, you know, we're going to see more games on Game Pass. More games are going to be like more widely available to people. Games are going to become exclusives probably, but not Call of Duty. There's a 10-year agreement with you, Sony. You guys are good for a while. And yeah, I don't know, just in general, just really kind of crazy that this actually happened, because they already bought Bethesda. Now they've got 2 kind of huge studios, plus others they've bought up in the past. And yeah, Microsoft making some moves in the gaming industry. It's kind of crazy. Well, what do you guys think? Is Microsoft's purchase of Activision Blizzard King a threat to the gaming industry? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like, a subscribe, and I will see you next time.